Thank you so much, Divya and Mohit, for that very kind introduction. As I say, my name is Chris Patterson. I am a staff program manager here at GitHub. And today I am coming to you from Cary, North Carolina in the United States. And we're going to give kind of a tour of some of the new things that we have been working on with GitHub Actions over the past several months. But before we do that, I do want to give a big shout out to a bunch of my colleagues in India who I've worked with for almost 15 years. I'm incredibly excited that GitHub is now in India and that I'm able to work with the developer community there more than I always have. Here's some photos of me during several of my trips to India. Hyderabad has been the primary location, so I've got Golconda, and I've even driven in India. One of my colleagues loaned me his car, and that was quite an exciting experience. But enough about me. Let's go on to talk more about actions. So today, I want to cover 4 different areas that we have been working on in GitHub Actions to help improve things for a number of different places. So we're going to talk about continuous delivery. We shipped a bunch of new features about continuous delivery at Universe. We've made some enhancements since then and really been working to take the feedback from the community and improve those things. We've been working very hard on making actions more secure. And this is a big focus of mine personally, actually. And if you think about things like the recent SolarWinds issues, where CI can absolutely be a potential place where security can, you can create security holes in your software development infrastructure. GitHub Actions being secure is incredibly important. Enterprise, as Erica mentioned in the keynote, Enterprise Server has got a very important place in the overall portfolio at GitHub, and we've just seen huge adoption of it over the past year. And one of the key features that a lot of our customers on Enterprise Server have been waiting for is GitHub Actions, and it's finally here. And then finally, scale. On github.com in our cloud, we have hundreds of thousands of repos that rely on actions every day, and we need to make sure we can scale to provide all of the necessary resources. So a little bit about actions and how it's grown. GitHub Actions is just a bit over a year old at this point. And from a perspective of the community embracing it, it's just been absolutely incredible. In the marketplace, there's about 7,000 or a little more than 7,000 available different actions you can use in your GitHub Actions workflows. And if I look across github.com at all of the actions that are used kind of on a monthly basis, it's really closer to about 15,000 different actions used in workflows. And so it means there's a lot of people who are using them just within their own organizations, and that's incredible to see. From a scale perspective, the growth is just skyrocketing. We're now just in the github.com cloud. This only includes the runners that we host, more than 125 million jobs a month and growing at an astounding rate. And all of that in the community has really brought us to be the #1 CI platform on GitHub in just over a year. And it's incredible. And we're incredibly honored to have you guys as part of that. Now, GitHub Enterprise Server. Actions is generally available on GitHub Enterprise Server 3. You can set up your enterprise server, you can configure actions, you can run workflows, you can use actions in your workflows locally in your server, as well as through GitHub Connect. You can take advantage of that incredible actions community that I just talked about. So we've really enabled GitHub Enterprise Server to reach out and take advantage of the cloud. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is continuous delivery. So when we started down this journey, everybody said, well, GitHub Actions is an automation platform. I can do continuous delivery with it today. And of course you can. But the thing that we wanted to do is make sure that you could do continuous delivery in a way that was more secure, that could be better, that had some of the core capabilities that people expect. Things like manual approvals and other kinds of rules. And so as part of the conversation today, I want to talk about sort of 5-ish new capabilities. Some we've talked a little bit about at Universe, some are new since then, that we're bringing in the overall space around continuous delivery, DevOps, security for GitHub Actions. So the first one was just the simple, I want to be able to visualize and see what's going on in my workflows. And this is a feature we did ship at Universe, so we've enhanced it quite a bit since then to improve the performance and add a few little more tweaks to it to make it better. But it's great to be able to see how your workflow is progressing, particularly if you have a complex deployment pipeline or a large matrix to help understand what's left, what's going on. It's just a great addition to the overall experience. The second area to talk about is the environment protection rules. Whenever you've got a continuous delivery workflow that's deploying to, say, a production environment, it can be important for a lot of organizations to make sure there's two sets of eyes who are approving these things. So there's the developer that approved the source code, and then there is some other person, a release manager, engineer, somebody who says it's okay to deploy to production. With the environment protection rules, we started out with just two, and we've actually added one since then. And over time, we plan to make this an extensibility point to enable you to plug in your own systems to allow you to control when things deploy. The main protection rules are this required reviewers rule that basically says that somebody within a team or an individual has to approve a job before it goes through. And then we'll talk a little bit more through the demo about exactly what happens at that point. Secrets. GitHub Actions has had secrets since it first launched, but those secrets were bound to the repository and the repository only. And that meant that any workflow in that repository could just reference a secret and get that value. And obviously that works fine for a number of scenarios, but in something like a production deployment, it's just not sufficient. So we wanted the ability to scope these secrets to an environment. So we introduced environment-specific secrets. And those work by making sure that whenever GitHub Actions workflow runs and references an environment, the protection rules have to pass before that job starts and before it gets access to those secrets. And so you could have a secret called deploy key that is scoped to, say, the repository that the development environment can use. And then another secret that's the same name, so you don't have to change your workflow, but has a different value that is protected by the protection rules for production. It's always important to know what has been deployed where. And this is one of these capabilities that GitHub has actually had for a long time. If you're very familiar with GitHub, you might know there's this thing called the Deployments API. And that really shows you a list of the activity of deployments to different environments and can tell you exactly which commit has been deployed to a particular environment. And so as part of our goal to really build Actions and build it deeply integrated into GitHub, we, instead of creating something new to track your deployments, Actions just plugs right into this. And this is also nice because it's another place that's extensible in GitHub for even third parties. And we'll look at how Actions plugs into the deployment API to give you that strong element of history. And finally, security features. This is actually a preview of a feature that hasn't quite shipped yet, but will be shipping soon. We've done a bunch of work in GitHub Actions to improve security. We've done some blog posts. We've done a bunch of documentation. We've made some changes to the way we process environment variables and things, and are continuing to work with the security community, both at GitHub and out in other security researchers to find and fix any issues. One of the core tenets of security, obviously, is least access. And by default, when GitHub Actions shipped, it had this secret called GitHub token, which is really just a GitHub apps token. And it had pretty broad permissions within the repo. It could read and write source code, read and write issues, pull requests, etc. And it works well in a lot of cases, but because GitHub Actions is so much of an automation platform, there's lots of different kinds of things people do, like this example of a cleanup PR, or I've got a workflow that just looks at issue comments and does some processing. In those cases, I don't need those broad permissions. I really want to have a very narrow set of permissions. And so we're introducing a new permissions block, which is actually available at the workflow level and the job level. And you can go in and change the permissions for this particular workflow. And so in this example, I've got just contents read. So all I can do is read the source. I can't write the source. And having the ability to control that with give you least access, we think is going to be very valuable and just continue to help improve the security of GitHub Actions in the future. So what I want to do is walk you through a demo of how some of these things come together. So I'm going to switch over to a repo here, which is a popular GitHub repos by language. It's a pretty simple application that basically just looks at all the GitHub repos and lets you sort them by language. And in this particular case, I've got a couple of different workflows set up to do some different things for me. So to get started, I'm going to go add a new feature or a new language. Simply go into my code, pull this up. I'm going to edit this, and I'm just going to add, I don't know, let's go with Ruby. So really simple, add Ruby, go down, we'll create a branch for it, call it Chris Pat Patch 3, that's fine, adding Ruby, and propose this change. Get presented with our normal pull request dialog, create that pull request, and wait for actions to kick off. And then in a couple of seconds here, we should see actions jobs kicking off to start working through the various parts of my workflow. And so the first thing it's going to do is go build this pull request. And let's go take a look at, while we're waiting for that to build, we're going to take a look at what this workflow is doing. So in this case, I've got a couple of different workflows. I've got my deploy, and we can see it's triggered off a pull request when it's targeting main. It is triggered off a push for main, and it does a couple of different things. So I've got a build job here, checks out, sets up node. Using our caching capability, it caches the node modules, which should speed things up. And then uses a couple of different other actions, which are really great. So we got our basic script one, but the ones I want to call attention to here are these Docker login and the Docker, the setup buildx, Docker login, and then the Docker build and push action. These are built by Docker in concert with GitHub. We worked with them on it, and they are just a great example of a partner who's taken the power of GitHub Actions and built some great core functionality and made it available for the community that we like to rely on. Now, in this next job, I've got this deploy to review environment. So what this does is it creates a review of my app. So it creates a unique website with a unique URL for my app in the review lab. And I can see it only runs on pull requests. So I'm using the power of GitHub Actions and the conditional syntax there. And I can also see that I'm taking advantage of one of the core capabilities of Actions of having them output information. So we see this other action that is from Azure, another one of our partners, and it knows how to deploy to Azure Web Apps. And what it does is it takes the container, in this case that I built, deploys to Azure Web Apps and outputs the URL and lets me bind it directly in here. And we'll show how that pulls together some core traceability. So we go back and take a look at our Actions workflow. We should see that it's moving along. So we can see that deploy to review is started. And as one of these nice features in the visualization, I can see the progress it's made, but I can also see right here in my Actions view the URL it goes to. And even further, if I happen to come into the pull request first, I get this nice view right here in the pull request. I can see the exact environments this was deployed to. I can get a link to the Actions run that it went to. And of course, I can click on and view that deployment. And I can see that Ruby has been added. And that is just awesome. So I can click on Ruby. It looks great. So what I'm going to do is go in and merge this pull request and confirm the merge and let that code go. And it's going to start my next workflow. So if everything worked out well, we see that our merge pull request is kicked off and it's going to start the next build job. So let's go take a look and see how this workflow is going to complete. And actually, we can see in this case, 2 different workflows kicked off. I clicked off this, this cleanup PR. So in this case, I've got a job that's going to delete my review slot. And this is taking advantage of that new capability we talked about for limiting permissions. So in this case, my cleanup PR workflow goes and deletes that deployment of my application that I made for the pull request. And so I'm not wasting money, right? Cloud resources cost money. I want to make sure they go. But in this case, I only need read of the source code. I actually don't need any other permissions. So I was able to lock down the permissions for this particular workflow and make sure that it only does exactly what it needs to do. That way, if for whatever reason I've done something not quite right, or there's some other issue, I'm protecting myself. Now, in the workflow that does the deployment, if I go look at the next set of jobs, so I had deploy to review, we see I also have deploy to staging. In this case, this one only runs if the ref is on main. And this gets important for some of the environment protection rules that we'll take a look at here in a second. So in this case, I'm going to deploy to staging. It's very similar to the other job. And then after that, it deploys to staging. If everything looks good, it's going to go under production. But of course, I don't want things to just immediately go to production, right? I want to have some sort of approval or step in there to make sure things aren't just moving along. So to do that, in my settings, I have this new section called environments. And we see here that I've got review lab, staging, and production. If I look at production, I have 2 protection rules configured on this. So in this case, I've got required reviewers, of which I happen to be one for this demo, but you could also make sure that it's somebody else on your team or some other team. But I also have this other one that we've introduced recently called deployment branches. And what this says is only workflows that are triggered from the main branch, in this case, are able to deploy to this environment. And in fact, we've got a couple of different settings. So I can say all branches, I could say only protected branches, or in this case, my selected branch. And you also see I have my Azure subscription secret. And this is the same name, but a different secret from the one in my repository. And my workflow only gets access to this secret when it runs against this, this environment. And it can only run against the environment after the rules have passed. So if we go back and look here at our actions workflow, we can see it's deploying to staging. In just a second, it should complete that and go to production. And then we'll get a notification that I need to approve it. Notifications are incredibly important at GitHub. And whether it's a pull request review or anything else, being able to get that notification when and where you need it, particularly in the web, in email, or in the incredible GitHub mobile app, so you can unblock your team, is important. And another feature that we're launching very soon in concert with the mobile team is the ability to have these review notifications on the mobile app. You'll see more about that soon, but again, this is a kind of a quick sneak peek. Of course, it'll be there for iOS and Android. Go back and take a look here. Just taking a quick second. And of course, click through. It's fully interactive to see what's going on. Go back and take a look here at my old notifications. Have any there. Let's go back and look. All right, so now we're at deploy to production. So if we see here, it's popped up, it's stopped. So the workflow is paused. It's no longer running on a runner. It's simply waiting for somebody to come along and approve it, and says, me, Chris Peck, because I triggered this workflow, as requested review to deploy to production. I can, of course, click review deployments here. And if come and look at notifications, I can see right here that I see this nice notification that tells me that I'm looking for a review, and I can rapidly get the information I need to unblock the team. So if I click on that, it'll navigate me here, click on review requested, say, looks good, good, ship it, approve and deploy. And this job will pick up and deploy my application to the production version of my website and keep on going. So that's a quick tour of some of the new capabilities we have in GitHub Actions. In fact, I've got one more little thing I want to show you. So there's always a case where a particular environment, typically production, wants to make sure that only one thing can deploy to it at a time. And so we're introducing a new capability that will ship in a few weeks that's being tested right here, which will allow me to serialize those deployments. So keep an eye out for that. It should be really interesting. I've got some great content coming to really help you, again, drive those continuous delivery workflows and just use GitHub Actions to its fullest. So with that said, I want to thank you so much for coming to my talk and hopefully using GitHub Actions. I look forward to spending the next little bit answering your questions and helping you learn more.
Dhanyavad, Chris. वो तो घणो छोको हो. That means thank you, Chris. That was awesome.
Thank you,
A
Divya.
huge shout out to our developer community in the West India. We love you all and welcome to GitHub Satellite. And with that, let's jump into the Q&A.
Awesome. So the first question, Chris, that we see here is, we've talked about continuous development and that being in the beta. Can you speak more about that and share, like, when would that be generally available?
Absolutely. So all the features I showed you today, minus the, I think the mobile app hasn't quite shipped, and that serialization feature that we're looking at have shipped to github.com and are available. We chose to make the features that we shipped at Universe a beta because we wanted to have some time to get some feedback. And we also knew that we weren't quite done with the core set of features that we wanted to have available for our customers. And finally, from just an engineering health perspective, we wanted to make sure that we could monitor them, we could support them, we knew what was happening, all of the things that you know you have to do when you run a service. So we think we're about a month away from calling them GA, a couple of small things left to ship, a few more small bugs to fix, and sometime during the month of April, we think we'll call these GA and then make them, and they're already widely available at everybody. It's completely open beta, but the general availability also unlocks it so we can ship them in the next version of GitHub Enterprise Server. So GitHub Enterprise Server, there's, I think, an update 3.1 is coming soon. And then there'll be another one after that. So it won't be in the 3.1 version, but we want to make sure all these hit the 3.2 that comes after that.
Awesome. That's very insightful, Chris. You also mentioned that GitHub Action is GA on the enterprise server. Why is it important?
So as we heard in the keynote from Erica, GitHub Enterprise Server is just a very important part of the overall GitHub product family. And we have lots of customers for a wide variety of reasons that need to use it. And not having every single feature that's available on github.com is just not acceptable, right? They want to have all of the power of GitHub, but run in their own data centers. GitHub Actions was one of the largest features that just wasn't there yet. And it took us a long time. It took almost a full year of very dedicated development from a good percentage of the team in order to take GitHub Actions and bring it to GitHub Enterprise Server. There was a significant amount of effort to do that. And now that it's there, a lot of customers, very large customers who have been asking for it, are happy and starting to adopt. And again, it's all about making sure that GitHub Enterprise Server sells the full vision and the full value that people expect from github.com, but in your own data center. I think one of the other unique things we did with Actions, which has kind of been done before, is really start to think about GitHub Enterprise Server as an extension of github.com. So through GitHub Enterprise Connect, you can connect your server to your github.com enterprise and allow your developers who are running workflows there to take advantage of the marketplace, of the community of actions that's available on github.com. There's some controls and things you have in there to make sure to provide some rails and some guidelines. But we do think it's important that just because you need to run everything in your data center for very good reasons, that you're also able to take advantage of the open source community as much as is possible.
Oh yes, that is, especially GitHub Connect will be really, really useful for enterprises. Now coming to, again, enterprise need and that whole DevOps cycle, you talked a little about granular permissions control feature. Do you want to share more about that?
Sure. As I mentioned in the demo, one of the key things is to make sure that, a key security tenet is least access, right? In all things you do, you want to make sure that you give people the least access possible, or you give a process, especially automation. That's a really ripe area for attack. And as we started GitHub Actions, just for a variety of reasons, we built it where we actually did narrow the permissions from a standard GitHub app. So typically, when you have a standard GitHub app, you give it a list of repos. You say this has some set of permissions to this set of repos. Well, with GitHub Actions, we at least narrowed that to a single repo. Now, within that repo, you still had fairly broad permissions because we wanted people to be able to automate all kinds of things. You know, they want to automate CI, but they also automate issue bots. And we see amazing variety of different things. So the GitHub Apps token could read, write source, could read, write issues, read, write PRs, et cetera. You can go look at the documentation and see all of the capabilities it has. But of course, any given workflow doesn't necessarily need to be able to do all those things. And we have had requests from this in the community. And certainly as we wanted to get there, it just took us a while. But as part of this push that we've been really working on this past couple of months, we thought it was the right time to go and implement this new feature. And so what it lets you do is that permissions lock basically lets you customize the permissions of the GitHub token that are generated for every specific run. And you can actually do it at 2 levels. You can say the whole workflow has a token of this set of permissions, or you can say just a job. And why that's important is I could do something like, say, have a depend about workflow. And maybe it can, the first job that actually pulls the untrusted source from the pull request opened by Dependabot has just read source option. Like it's can only read source, or maybe it can read source and write issues or something like that. And so I can run that potentially untrusted workload in a very narrow set of permissions. And then if that passes, I can then have a second job that maybe merges the PR or does something else that requires higher permissions. But I don't execute any untrusted code as part of that. So I don't have the ability for, say, a compromised dependency to come in and insert something into my repo. So it's really about that fine-grained control to really give you that least access for whatever the scenario is.
Wow, that's very, very insightful, Chris. We're getting a lot of questions and we'll take just one last here. Any idea by when private repos would get environments in Actions?
So private repos have environments with Actions today, but they're only part of the enterprise SKU. So you have to have an enterprise plan to use environments with private repos. It's something that we're taking, we certainly have seen the feedback from the community that people wanted in team. It is something that we are discussing. But today we sort of, because the environments protection rules and things like that are very compliance oriented, et cetera, we sort of group them with the other sets of features that tend to be in that enterprise plan.
Great, great. And this question was from Dipen. Thanks a lot, Chris. And for our audience, let me share with you that Chris is not going anywhere. He is with you all for the next 30 minutes at GitHub discussions. So post all your queries, get all your answers from him, and he's joining you at his midnight. So take as much as possible from him. Bye-bye, Chris. We'll let you go and enjoy your time with our viewers at GitHub discussions.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.